For thousands of years, humans across completely different continents described the same creature: a massive reptilian body, scaled skin, claws capable of tearing stone, a long tail, sometimes wings, sometimes fire, sometimes living in caves, mountains, or deep forests. These creatures were called by many names, but today we know them as dragons. What makes this story unsettling is not the fantasy itself, but the consistency. Ancient China, medieval Europe, the Middle East, Africa, and even the Americas all recorded dragon-like beings. These cultures had no contact with one another, no shared books, no shared myths, and yet their descriptions overlap again and again. So the question is not whether dragons existed in stories. That part is obvious. The real question is why so many ancient people believed dragons were real animals, not symbols, and why they wrote about them as living, breathing threats. Some of the earliest dragon descriptions come from ancient Mesopotamia, the Babylonian creation myth. The Enuma Elish speaks of Tiamat, a gigantic serpentine creature associated with chaos, water, and destruction, while later generations would mythologize her. The original texts describe a physical being, defeated in battle, not a metaphor, a creature, in ancient Egypt. The serpent Apep was believed to attack the sun god Re every night. Egyptian priests performed rituals to stop Apep, not because they thought it was imaginary, but because they believed it existed somewhere beyond the known world. China provides some of the most detailed dragon records in history. Unlike Europe, Chinese dragons were not always evil. They were associated with rivers, rain, floods, and imperial power. Chinese historical texts describe dragons falling from the sky during storms, being found injured, or emerging from rivers. These are not fairy tales. They are written in official chronicles, the same texts that record famines, eclipses, and wars. One Chinese account from the Tang Dynasty describes villagers discovering a large dragon-like creature. After a storm, officials were sent to inspect it. Food was brought. The creature later disappeared. This was not written as legend, but as an event. In medieval Europe, dragons were feared. Churches carved them into stone. Monks wrote about them in bestiaries. Knights were sent to hunt them. Entire villages were abandoned due to dragon sightings, according to some local records. The famous story of Saint George and the dragon is often treated as pure myth today. But earlier versions describe a real animal terrorizing a region. The dragon poisoned water sources. Livestock vanished. People disappeared. These details resemble large predatory animals more than symbolic evil. Roman writers also mentioned dragons. Pliny the Elder wrote about enormous serpents in Africa capable of killing elephants. He described their size, strength, and behavior in a naturalist tone, not a mythological one. In the Middle East, Islamic scholars recorded creatures known as tannin or as daha. These beings were described as gigantic reptiles inhabiting remote regions. Some texts describe dragon bones being found and used for medicine. That brings us to one of the most disturbing pieces of the dragon puzzle: bones before modern paleontology. Ancient people had no concept of dinosaurs. When they uncovered massive fossilized bones, they interpreted them using the knowledge they had. In China, dinosaur fossils were called dragon bones and sold in pharmacies for centuries. This practice continued into the 20th century in Europe. Fossilized skulls of dinosaurs like Protoceratops may have inspired dragon imagery: a large beak-like mouth, a bony frill for legs, a long tail, found in deserts or mountains. To an ancient traveler, this would look exactly like the remains of a dragon. But fossils alone do not explain everything. Some dragon descriptions include behavior, hunting patterns, sounds, territorial instincts. Far breathing is often dismissed as fantasy, but some researchers suggest it could be a misunderstood natural phenomenon. Certain animals produce flammable gases during digestion. In theory, a large reptile expelling gas near sparks from stones or static electricity could create brief flashes of flame. Rare, but not impossible. Others suggest that ancient people may have encountered surviving megafauna, large reptiles that went extinct later than we think. The Komodo dragon, discovered by Western science only in the 20th century, was long believed to be a myth by locals. It is large, aggressive, venomous, and capable of killing humans. Now imagine something larger in a more dangerous ancient world. There are also psychological explanations. Humans are wired to fear snakes and reptiles. The dragon could be a shared archetype, a symbol of danger encoded into our brains. But this theory does not explain the detailed, location-specific reports found in historical texts. Another overlooked factor is censorship. As science advanced, dragon stories were reclassified as myths. Ancient texts were translated with bias. Words meaning great serpent or winged reptile were softened into metaphor. Over time, the idea of dragons as real animals was erased, yet traces remain. Medieval maps often marked unknown regions with dragons and monsters. The phrase here, "be dragons," was not decorative. It was a warning. Even into the 17th century, natural philosophers debated whether dragons still existed in unexplored regions. They did not laugh at the idea. They discussed it seriously. So, were dragons real? The honest answer is uncomfortable. We do not know. But what we do know is that ancient people across the world did not invent dragons casually. They wrote about them the way we write about bears, lions, or wolves, as dangerous animals that could be avoided, hunted, or worshipped Maybe dragons were misidentified animals. Maybe they were extinct reptiles. Maybe they were something else entirely. But the idea that every culture independently invented the same creature with the same features over thousands of years without any real-world trigger is harder to believe than we like to admit. And as you fall asleep, consider this thought. If dragons never existed, why did so many people behave as if they did?